All right, guys. Sorry about the delay, but we had some technical difficulties. Plus, there's a thunderstorm that's literally like sitting over my house, moving at like 5 miles an hour right now. So if we get cut off, I'm sorry. But Eric Bishop is with us tonight. Haven't seen Eric in a bit, dude. We haven't seen each other in person since BoucherCon in Minnesota. Right?
3 years.
It's been a minute.
3 years.
It's been a minute. Since then, you've released a whole bunch of books. I've released 0. So we have a lot to talk about with you, my friend, especially Supreme Justice, which is out now. I've been digging into, so congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
How has the reaction been to it so far? This is like the third Body Man book, but it's kind of, sort of not exactly a Body Man book. So it's a little bit of a departure, but it's a unique departure. It still is in the Body Man world. How's it been? How's the reception been?
Yeah, so the reception so far has been terrific. I was worried. I wrote a author's note at the end of the book because I raised a bunch of issues in the book and they're not resolved. And I figured I'm going to get a lot of nasty emails from people saying, dude, what are you doing? And we can get into the story of why this became part of the Body Man series, because it wasn't originally going to be that.
Yeah, I think I remember you telling me that a long time ago, that it was this character was a complete spinoff.
Yes, and it was going to be a new series. Basically, I was going to start a new series.
Very cool way the way you've introduced her, though. I think you could still do its own series, but I think it's really cool how you introduced her into this already established one and what it can do going forward. But I'll let you talk more to that.
Yeah, well, I had an idea to basically do her own series, and then I was going to bring in, I've got a backstory for her, and I have this whole, I don't even have it completely fleshed out in my head, honestly, but I have this whole world she was part of with other female assassins. So that still could come into the mix at some point. We'll just have to see. For now, I don't want to spread myself too thin by having the Body Man series, Omega Group series, Merci has a series. And so what I pivoted and decided to do is, how do I tie these things in a little closer, a little more, which I hope I did with Supreme Justice. The early reads I got from people, and then before it was released and after it was released, were very positive to what I did. So time will tell.
I really like what you did with it. And I'm about halfway through it now. And I think it was really cool compared to what you had told me in the past and how you were going to introduce this character, and then how you did it now in the Body Man world was really cool. I think it sets up a lot for the future, which you can talk about. But yeah, I wanted to ask you that too. I try to ask a lot of folks this, like, doing multiple books a year, let alone juggling multiple series. How do you kind of keep it all organized so that you're not blending one with the other and you're kind of chipping away at them at a time and putting out that quality?
Well, to start with, it's psychotic to try to do a couple books a year when you have kids, full-time job. Not only are you writing, but you're running your own publishing company as well, your own legal entity and stuff. So it's not, I will say this, and I've said this on other podcasts, it's not sustainable. Like, I've had people say, how long are you going to be doing 2 books a year? And I'm like, I think 2 more years I'm mentally committed to. After that, I better have some pay dirt happen to make it viable.
Yeah, start hopping around, skipping years and stuff like that.
Well, and what I've did, and the reason I'm able to do it is everything that's with the Omega Group series are all part of something I started years ago before the Body Man.
So you have I have work.
Yes, I have this collection of stories, and they're really good stories, but I didn't know the ins and outs with writing well enough at the time. So it took 5, 6, 7 years to develop my voice to figure things out. So now I'm able to go to those stories I wrote in 2014 and 15 and 16 and on, and I'm able to basically give them the attention they need, and I'm able to fix them, and I can fix them in a period of months versus writing them from scratch in, take 6 months or whatever it might be. So that's the only reason the Omega Group is able to survive. But they were important enough to me to revisit those characters and try to get them out into the world.
Something I've always wanted to ask, and I've never done it. I wrote it down to ask you, so this will be the first time I've asked this question. How do you fill out the acknowledgements?
Um, they're an important part to me, I will say. That was actually a kind of a battle I had with my publisher because I wanted my acknowledgments to go in the front of the book, and eventually they put it in the back, which is funny enough. Now I publish my own books and I put them in the back as well. But with that first book, so many people helped get me over that finish line.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many people read acknowledgments. I do. So when I get someone's book, before I read the first page, I go read their acknowledgments. And if their acknowledgments are, they write a book in acknowledgments where it's just telling a massive story and how they came up with it, I might not go through it all. But I like to see like who they thank. And it's not a knock at people that only thank two people, nothing like that. But to me, it's kind of a window into the person and a window into how they created it. And so for me, it's always been a community effort. Even though I'm the one that writes the whole novel, other people have helped or they've encouraged me. Like, you're in my acknowledgments. You've been one of those people since day one that's been like, dude, pursue this, or man, I got your back. And to me, that's like the one sacred space where you have to be like, hey, I wrote this really kick-ass story.
Yeah.
But these are all the people that are kind of in my circle. So that's how I kind of take it. And I try to give a little bit of an explanation of how the story came about. And then I just kind of go into the people of that I want to thank. And also, like, if I'm cameos, I might explain the cameos. I try to say why a book is dedicated to someone. So for this particular book, it's dedicated to a college friend, Donald Cheshire, Donnie, we always called him, who unfortunately passed away before I ever published a book. But he's been on my mind recently. He died right when I turned 40. So he's died almost 9 years, 8.5 years ago now, which is a long time, but doesn't seem like that long ago.
Yeah.
But he got diagnosed with a rare disease when he was in high school. He used to play a football player, and he was given this impossible choice. And I'm sure his parents was involved in making the decision, but impossible choice was either you're going to have this debilitating disease that's going to affect it's called Wegener's disease, really rare disease. Like, I don't know, 700 or 6 or 7,000 people get diagnosed with it, like a year or whatever, but super rare.
Wow. And
he was basically told, we can do minimal treatment and it's going to affect your nervous system. You're going to be in there, but you'll have a life, but quality might not be great. Or we can put you on a massive dose of prednisone that will hopefully keep this thing in check, but it will significantly affect your lifespan. And he decided to go with quality over quantity. So he had told me that years ago. And, you never knew what that is. He going to live to be 30, 40, 50, 60? He died at 40. So, he had half of a lifespan, basically. But that guy I've complained a lot in my life, especially, 5, 6 years ago, I was complaining a whole lot with what was going on in my life. Man, he never complained once. Never complained once. Never like, woe is me or anything. And that's stuck with me as I've gotten older. It's a lesson I've taught my kids. And to keep it serious, but not in a way. So the reason then, why'd you dedicate this book to him? He liked one of my other female characters I did for my Troy Evans series, Troy's significant other. He really liked her. And I just was like, he would have loved Merci. It would have been his type of a character. And I said, well, if I'm going to dedicate a book central to Merci to anyone, it's got to be Donnie. His favorite phrase from Seinfeld was "giddy up." So I had to throw a giddy up in the acknowledgments for him. And it's something that years later now, I'll pick up that book and I'll flip open a couple pages and it'll be dedicated to him and it'll bring a smile to my face. And hopefully, I know some of our mutual friends have already seen that. They smiled at it, seeing that, hey, the Don Man is mentioned. So that's one of the real treats about getting to write stories, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always wondered that because, you see some guys, write really lengthy acknowledgments, thanking everybody that they possibly can. And I think that's great because you want to give everybody their due credit and kind of give them their props. And it's your way of saying thank you. And then I've seen some that's like, it's just a paragraph. And there's like, thanks to everybody who made this happen. Thanks to my family. Boom. And it's done. And I'm like, every book that I've started, I've always done a chapter where I did acknowledgements. And then as I talked to people and got advice, I just put their name in there real quick. That way I could always just keep track of it. And then you just kind of go, how long am I going to keep up with this? Like writing acknowledgements is a book itself.
Yeah. I know like Brad Taylor, who I know, Brad writes a pretty detailed acknowledgement, and it's mainly how the story happened.
Mm-hmm.
And normally he'll end up telling about a trip that him and Elaine went on. And then, of course, he'll thank family and other people. But his is a lot of a story of how that novel came to be. Then you got the Jack Cars, who obviously his acknowledgments in the past were quite lengthy. So the way he had it, I like the way he had it. So I did in some way probably model mine a little bit after that. I liked how he like bolded the names, and I was like, "No, that's cool because it makes it stand out."
Yeah.
So kind of took those lessons from what other people did. But yeah, some of the people I know, man, they don't thank very many people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just like, man, I don't want to do it that way. And the cool thing about the acknowledgments is it's your stamp at the end of the book, however you want to put it. If you want to say, thanks to nobody, I got this book done. Hey, you can do that. But if you want to thank the kitchen sink and everyone else, then you have that ability to as well.
Sure. Yeah. I go back and forth on like, do I just want to make it short and sweet, or do I want to draw it out and make sure I mention everybody? And I think for my first big fiction book, I'm going to draw it out. And then after that, it might just be something simple, cut and dry. Like, appreciate you guys tuning in again. Thanks to everybody who made it happen. Done.
I even made changes, and I was concerned with this when I first did it. So, the Body Man came out in 2021, and then I re-released it in 2024 as a second edition once it came under my own imprint. And I had the original file. I didn't use the file from the publisher that they edited. I used the original file I gave the publisher that had been edited by someone else. Well, I didn't have the acknowledgements with that original file. It was just a novel. So I pulled in. So I had the acknowledgements because I had to send them to the publisher. So I pulled them in, and I pulled them into the back of the second edition. But as I started kind of flipping through and reading them, I'm like, man, there's like a bunch of people on here that I really haven't talked to since 2021. And they were helpful with that first thing, but they're kind of not in the picture anymore. And I was like, man, do I take them out? Is that rude? Does that come across as wrong? And I'm like, will anyone ever even notice? So I did. I tweaked out a bunch or removed out a bunch of names of people that I hadn't spoken to in probably 4 years at that point, or 3 or 4 years. So they were similar, but I shortened some of it too. I was in a different space headwise. My headspace was different, so I decided to change them, which won't be something probably will ever happen with another future release. But that one, I was like, I'm gonna make a few changes to it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things. It's like you said, it's your stamp on kind of the book. It's the last thing that's in there is that, and if there's an author's notes or if there's any kind of like publisher preview or anything like that, but it's usually the last thing that's in a book, and it's kind of like your stamp. But let's talk a little bit more about Supreme Justice. This one, like we talked earlier, is it's in the Body Man world, and it's a little bit of a departure from the Body Man series, quote unquote. But it introduces Merci, which is a very unique character. We haven't seen it before. What was your kind of trepidation on introducing her now, and why was now the time?
Well, she was in the first 2 books, but she was a very minor character. So in the first 2 books, you basically were given this glimpse of this very attractive, sultry kind of who uses her goods to kill people, essentially. And she was the one, I got a lot of response to her for the Body Man. And then when the Body Man came out, she was the one that definitely got a lot more response. So before I got take a step back, before I got the Body Man deal, I went through a divorce. I didn't write for about a year and a half, or I didn't keep anything I wrote. And I had already written about 30,000 words of Mercy's story, because for whatever reason, after I wrote there was years after I wrote the Body Man before I got the deal in 2021. So I had really wanted to start her story. So I had started it basically, but not much to it because I didn't know who she was at that point. Well, I kind of figured out who she was during the divorce, during that time of going through the divorce. And when I sat down, and this is how it worked. The day my court-ordered mediation took place, I kind of stepped out of the lawyer's office. I was in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I was literally there today getting my car, my oil changed. I drove by the old law office, walked out of the law office, and as cliche as it sounds, I felt this burden come off me, because I knew financially what my future was going to be, how often I'm going to see my kids, what, just how everything was going to shake out. And for a year and a half, that was very uncertain. And it kept me from writing. It kept me from joy. I mean, it was just so difficult. And I just felt it come off me. And I didn't have the kids that night. But the first thing I thought of is I need to start writing. I felt like I hadn't wanted to write for a year and a half. And Merci came back to me because during that year, I'd kind of thought about that character a lot. And I kind of figured out why a woman like that would choose that kind of a career path. So I sat down that night and I started writing, and just I fell right back into place like I had with all the other books, right on the, boom. And so nights I didn't have the kids, between then and February, I wrote about 35,000 words of her story, somewhere in the 30 range, low 30s. And I was like, and I had a title for it. It was called Put Her Down, which remains in Supreme Justice as a line, but I took it out as the title. It was a horrible title. But I'll admit it. It was not good. It was not a good title, but
probably a good title if you're like, it's like a sentimental, like Homeward Bound kind of story.
Right. Right. Exactly. Or if you're going through a divorce, you're like, hey, this is a good title, but no, not a good title. Not at all. Sorry. Scratch that from my server. No. So then but then what was it, end of February, early March, whatever it was, March, I think, it was actually March 3rd or 4th, or whatever. And that was another irony. The day my divorce, and this isn't a pro-divorce conversation, they suck. But the day my divorce finalized, I got the document from my lawyer at like noon or somewhere around noon, 3 o'clock or 2, 3, whatever it was, 3 or 4 hours later, I got the email from the publisher saying, hey, we want to sign you to a 3-book deal with the Body Man. And it was this thing that I had worked towards for years, all of a sudden came true on the very day kind of my life was changing dramatically. So I put Mercy's story aside, and I literally didn't pick it up for 3 years. It just got put aside. I worked on The Body Man, then I wrote Breach of Trust, got that out. So then it was this whole like, what do I do next? Especially when I parted ways with the publisher, and I kept going back to, I've got to tell Mercy's story. I'll just start a new series. I was already starting the Omega Group series, and I was like, a third series would be a great idea. Then I got more into the business side of things, and I realized, you know what? It's not going to work. And I said, because she was in the first version that I started of Mercy's, or the Body Man was in Mercy's story at first, but very sporadic. And he was just going to be someone she went to help with really what happens in the story as it stands, what got published. But he was kind of going to be almost a one-off, like she was a one-off in his stories. Well, then when I kind of got back into it last year, and I figured I've got to make this part of the Body Man world. How do I do that? And I got back into I started editing the book again, and I was like, oh, this would be a good chapter for for a Body Man chapter. And so what I high level decided to do was, when Breach of Trust leaves off, and before I go to Downfall, this book is taking place at the same time as Downfall, basically. So there's pieces that are happening in Supreme Justice that are also taking place in Downfall, which will be book 4 in the series, which is basically the direct sequel to Breach of Trust. So this one kind of gets snuck in there, but it's happening at the same time. So when people are reading Downfall, there's going to be some Merci stuff that's not mentioned in Supreme Justice that's happening during Downfall. So I'm kind of doing this. I think it's a fun thing to do. It might be crazy to do it.
Sounds tricky. I'll be curious to see how you're how you navigating that. Writing 2 books same time, but not at the same time.
Yeah, Mark Greaney and all them do it. It can't be that hard. Come on, what in the world? So, well, the good thing is I don't have a 6-figure publishing deal that they're going to crucify me for and say, this thing better sell 100,000 copies or you're on the street.
Yeah, if you're wrong, you're just wrong.
Yeah.
You don't own it. You're the CEO. You got to explain it to yourself.
I got to explain it to myself. And I will also be my harshest critic. So it's not saying, that's not me saying, I'll just put this thing out. If it sucks, it'll be okay. No, everything I put out that's my reputation. That's my baby. So I've got enough of it planned out. I've started already writing it that it's going to come together. I just need the time to finish it, which we'll get there at some point.
Time's always that one thing that is hard to get more of.
It is.
Speaking of timing, the very first chapter of Supreme Justice sees the husband of a Supreme Court justice killed right from the get-go. That's how the book starts. When did that kind of come together and you said, okay, I'm going to kill off the spouse of a Supreme Court justice? Boom, immediately, and that's how the book's going to start.
Yeah. And I'm getting a storm here, by the way. I know.
Yeah, we're getting one too.
Problem. I do have Starlink, so that's always interesting in a big storm.
Well, we're hanging in so far. I can hear it outside my window, but we're hanging in. So tell me about the Supreme Court justice spouse being killed.
Yeah, so I wanted to set part of the book here where I lived, in the area I lived, and I just decided, the first thing it was a chapter I wrote, 4 years ago or whatever, how many years ago it was. It was just like, I want to put Merci in this kind of sexy / dangerous situation from the get-go. I just put her in her element, and the first thing she's gonna have to do is kill some guy. But she's not killing, nice accountant or whatever. Name your field. She's not killing the guy that runs Kinko's. She's killing this scumbag who's cheating on his wife, which he thinks is a prostitute. Unfortunately for him, it's a highly trained assassin who's gonna not leave any trace, and she's gonna make sure he exits this world. And I wanted to have fun with that element of her starting doing that. And the reason she's doing that, of course, develops during the story, which you find out of why did she take this contract? What's going on? And it's a much bigger thing than just the husband of Supreme Court justice. It's actually having to deal with the actual case that's being brought in front of the Supreme Court.
So what did you think of the Trump-Putin stuff today? To kind of change the subject just a little bit, but not today. Trump and Putin met on Friday, but it's kind of lingered over in today, and now we got the European leaders that were here.
Right. Zelensky was there, was today with the leaders. Yeah.
Are we closer to peace or ceasefire? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
It's so hard to know. And I avoid politics online just for that reason of you're going to eat your words almost. I know when Trump was running and before he came in, he said he would solve it basically on day one. I think everyone with common sense knew, that's not going to happen. Even if, the only way that could happen is if Zelensky did as, good, we'll take that.
Yeah.
And that's not something that I think was extremely likely then. I don't know if they're closer now. I think that they might be. But I think the difficulty now is I don't see Putin saying, well, we'll just back off to the really, almost you got to go back to 2014 is when they originally had come in and taken part of the Crimea area, was it?
Yeah.
I think. And I'm not like a expert on this region of the world. I've never written books about that. So I don't see that happening. So I think there's going to have to be some concession on land. But I think, saw something. I went to mow the lawn before we came on here, so I haven't seen anything in a couple hours. But I thought I saw something that Putin said they won't accept any kind of like a security presence for Ukraine, almost like a NATO multinational security presence. That can't be part of the deal. So I don't know. I don't know if we're any closer or not. What about you? What do you think?
It sounded like there was some progress between him and Trump, which is okay, but it also kind of doesn't matter.
Doesn't.
I also heard that there was, between him and Trump, that there was some Article 5 type of agreements, which is, for those who don't know, Article 5 of the NATO, is that NATO. An attack on one is an attack on all, is what Article 5 says in a nutshell. And that no NATO membership for Ukraine. However, there could be some Article 5-like agreements in place to help protect Ukraine and give them a level of security. But obviously nothing was agreed upon and solidified. But I thought that if that was something Putin was willing to discuss, then I thought that was kind of progress. But I agree with you. I think there's going to have to be some kind of concession on territory, and I don't think Zelensky's ever going to do that. And frankly, I don't blame him. It'd be like if somebody came over into your yard and said, I'm going I'm going to set up a shop right here in a corner of your yard and I'm not leaving because this is now mine. Well, what are you going to
Mm-hmm.
say? Well, no, I don't think so, brother. I pay the mortgage here. This is my
Yeah.
property, and that's not how this is going to work. So I would probably, I agree with him in that aspect of, well, why should I concede anything when he's the one who attacked us? We didn't ask for it. I mean,
Right.
we don't know all the little details, but in the
Mm-hmm.
grander scheme of things, what did Ukraine do to prompt an invasion?
Mm-hmm. That's a valid question. I think, and part of where my opinion is, and I don't, like I said, I kind of keep these quiet because a lot of times it's not fully formed. Like when it comes to that particular conflict, I've kind of changed my philosophy. Maybe as I've gotten older, maybe as my son's of the age where you served your country, and I've thought about it as having an 18-year-old. Would I want my son to be drafted, or would I want my son to join the military and go fight in a foreign war? I've seen the effects directly, like close friends that went and spent most of a career in the Middle East. I hate to say this, I don't want that for my kids. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want them to go fight a war for 20 years and just how it wrecks families, how the PTSD that happens. And again, I've seen it happen to someone that I care about. Um, so that kind of gives me pause with any conflict of like, is it, and especially for Ukraine and Russia, I don't necessarily like us being the world police. So
Agreed.
what can we really do to stand into that, come into that situation? We can fund Ukraine, which we've obviously done. We can give them missiles, but then are we poking the bear?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And really the bear only has one major recourse, and those lobbing things through the stratosphere at us, which we're then going to lob stuff back at them. And that's
I
like
know. There's no
worst
good
case
outcome.
scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've been keeping track of it over the years because I think you need to not be ignorant, but I've also been very hesitant to almost form an opinion because I've been ignorant to a lot of the facts. I definitely think it's a Russian aggression issue for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also issues in that part of the world where you can say, well, it used to be part of Russia, part of the Soviet Union.
Yep.
So you've had so much of the satellite stuff that take place. I mean, I don't know. It gets very complicated. I
Sure
think
is. And we don't know
either way,
we don't know the facts of a lot of things. Where that
right?
money exactly has been spent, what Putin is telling his advisors versus what he's telling the media versus what he's telling Trump and NATO. Like there's so much to it. I mean, we could sit here and talk about it forever and be wrong,
Yeah.
because we don't
No, I
know.
know.
We probably don't
We
know
don't know.
1% of the facts, but the one
Right.
thing we do know is that Russia invaded, and anytime another country invades another, like you kind of want to know, like, hey, what was the intent of that? And I
Yeah,
mean, because
I
that's
agree.
not cool. That's
Yeah.
not cool. Like, it's just not. And I really hope something comes of it, and I hope Trump does take care of it. I know he said he was going to do it within 24 hours of being in office, and that's unrealistic. But I understand what he was
Yeah.
trying to get across was, I'm going to be
Yeah, I
swift
do too.
and
I
try
do
to get it
too.
done. And I hope he does get it done this year. That'd be amazing. Just not for him. I could care less about his track record or anything like that. Just for the people of Ukraine, and think about the needless amounts of Russians that are probably dying on the front lines too. Like
Absolutely.
innocent
Yeah.
Russians that have nothing to do with this. You know,
And over there, you don't really have a choice when they knock on your door and say you're
you're
being
going to
conscripted. You
war.
don't say, "No, I don't think so. I'm good. I'm going to sit here and play my Xbox. Screw you, people." They're like, "Yeah,
You're going to
yeah."
war.
So yeah. I forget what I should know too, but like 1,200, something how the death. I forget what the death count has been. I know it's 4 or 5 figures a week. That's been literally been going on now for years. If it's a combination of both sides or not, I'm ignorant to the actual numbers. But again, that's someone's kid, that's someone's husband. That's a life that, man, I don't know. You're fighting for what? You could say on the Ukraine side, of course, you're fighting for your freedom. I get that one.
Mm-hmm.
On the Russian side, you're fighting what, to take back land you used to have. But does that person that's having to go to the front line and rush into certain death, are they cool with dying there? I mean, if they are, I guess okay, then that's their choice to give their
Mm-hmm.
life. But man, if you're not given the choice, that's your own. You only get one time at this, and I hate to think that the one time is going to be spent over what exactly.
Yeah. I know I saw some footage the other day, which I think is it's changing warfare for sure. This Ukraine Russia war is changing the way
Yeah.
warfare is and the way they're using drones. But I saw a video the other day. I think it was of Ukrainians, maybe it was of Russians killing. They cut the fiber optic line to a drone that was going through the woods,
Hmm.
and they're not completely wireless. Some of these drones are have a fiber optic cable that they're dragging behind them,
Right.
and they went up and they cut the fiber optic line, and then within a matter of seconds you heard the drone hit the ground and explode, and it wasn't a small explosion. I mean, it was a pretty big boom, and you're
Right.
like, holy crap, like that's what they're dealing with over there with the drone warfare, and that's the kind of war that we're fighting, which is completely different than anything we've ever seen. Like, we had unmanned stuff in the Middle East, but not like this.
Not to
This
this
is,
degree.
yeah, not to this degree. It's
Yeah.
been crazy, and it's just horrifying to think that like you could just turn the corner and a drone could be there to kill you.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Well,
movie
we're
stuff.
at this, and you know this now. We're at the stage where you could go buy a drone at big box stores and arm it. You could put some armament in it and then just suicide it, fly it into whatever, a house, a building, a vehicle, and you could use something like that that you can go buy for $1,000, and you turn it into a weapon that you can use,
Yeah.
which again, pretty wild. That was something that even 20 years ago, you had to basically have billions at the end of your defense budget to be able to afford, aerial type weapons. And now they're not that complicated to make. And now
No.
with the web, you can learn to make just about anything. So
Oh yeah, with a 3D printer you can print the parts.
yeah,
I mean, that's crazy. You could be doing it in your basement. Like, it's very very bizarre. Let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about the future of political thrillers, because the political environment across the world has kind of been, I don't know, in my opinion, it's been a little tiresome. Um,
hmm
is there still an appetite for political thrillers, or are we going to have to change it up a little bit to keep people on the hook?
I think there is, but I think that people are really having to evolve on the stories they're telling. Like, and they go through these spells. For years, a lot of the thrillers were making, the Soviet Union the big bad, the Clancy era when Clancy
Yeah.
first got going. You had the Soviet Union, and you had the global threat of nuclear annihilation as the big. That's what Jack Ryan's trying to stop. And then you get into the Vince Flynn, and I'm sure to some extent the Brad Thor era, although I didn't read a lot of Brad's compared to Vince's, where global terror is the hot button. Now you've kind of morphed in the last couple of years where you've got the threats going on in China and Taiwan, and you've got, of course, everything happening in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. That's kind of been the hot button. So I think they kind of gravitate towards that. And of course, a lot of these guys, and some of them as well, you've talked to some of these guys, they kind of do have a good crystal ball to figure out what's happening a year or two out.
Golly,
But
tell me about it.
they still get dated though. They still, if
Yeah.
you go out and pick up a book from 5 years ago from your favorite author, chances are it's already something that was in the news 3 years ago. So they are a little difficult. I think you might end up seeing more of a morph to Africa. I think that's possible that you're going to see some more African stuff happening because that continent just continues to grow and grow and grow, and there's a lot of bad stuff happening there that doesn't make the news. Also, India is just something that, I mean, they're pushing close to 2 billion people. So I've been actually looking at it for some future ideas for stories. So I think I think they still have a good future to do political thrillers, but I do think there's an argument that you can make that piece of the pie has been shrinking and might continue to, because it does seem like people are trying to get their escape from reality, not by reading a thriller, but by reading something that's more of a fantasy or,
Mm.
with a supernatural maybe element to it. So I definitely do think that market has probably been growing. And we, obviously we've talked offline. There's even in the publishing industry, you see it's so much harder for a lot of the, big name, even authors that have made a name for themselves to get the next book contract. It's not a slam dunk always. It might be for the top handful,
Hmm.
but when you start getting to the middle of the road pack, man, the publishing industry, they keep getting, it keeps constricting basically.
Yeah.
So
These
their
are good
cost, yeah,
books by great authors that are just
yeah,
the industry, the business side of it, I think is dictating, and I'm not saying this is wrong, but the business side is very much dictating the next contracts of people, where I think previously people had a lot more runway where they could say, okay, what we're doing, I think there's a difference between now and yesterday. Yesterday, they were trying to build catalogs because they knew once you get 6-7 books deep, when you introduce a new reader to that author, then they're good for 5 or 6 books because they're going to go try to get caught up on the series. Where I think nowadays they're not banking on that nearly as much, and they're saying we got to have 1 to 2 really, really solid books before we can think about a third and a fourth, because of just the nature of things. And I think that's partly to do with social media and the instant gratification and the scrolling. People don't have the patience for a 300-word book, let alone a 500 or 600 page book. Like, I would think that if Clancy was alive today and still writing books, he would be changing the way he would do things a little bit, because I just don't think he could pull off 700-word book today and get away with it. Mark Greaney can get away with a pretty high word count, but he's Mark Greaney and he's got an established audience, and the pacing is a little different. But I think that's a masterful thing.
Did you and I apologize if I didn't see the preview, did you have Kyle Mills for this run? Did you have him this summer?
Yeah, I had him on for Fade.
Okay, you did have him on for Fade. Okay,
yeah,
because he was on my podcast, and that's one of the questions I asked him, and I think we've talked about it offline, and he's talked about it, so I can reveal. I'm not revealing a trade secret. Is I was convinced when I heard he was leaving and going to do his own thing. I thought, man, they must have came out of the woodwork to offer him contracts, whether it be Putnam or Simon and Schuster or whoever, fill in the blank for the big 4 or 5. He must have had, and he had the complete opposite reaction to that. In fact, when he first was pitching for doing another Fade book, he had some like crazy suggestions on why don't you put him in this situation, like something he was not even thinking that he was going to write. And it floored me. I was just like, man, someone that literally has delivered. I mean, he wrote almost as many Mitch Rapp books as Vince wrote. He wasn't too far behind, Vince. A proven wordsmith that can sell, and he had bestsellers apart from series and apart from the legacy series he did.
Yeah.
So this isn't Eric Bishop saying, "Hey, I want a better contract." This is a guy that's made you guys probably some good bank. Yeah.
He's on the Mount Rushmore of a lot of people's military thriller, on the Mount Rushmore of a lot of people, and
absolutely.
But that's just a signal to not Kyle, but of the industry, because Fade is a great book. It's a great book,
right? Yeah.
But the industry right now is just, it's tough. Like, it's just, I feel for people trying to break into it, and that's part of the reason why I kind of have done some other things. Not that we're talking about me tonight, but
I want to though, because you've faced that same. We've had this conversation offline. You faced that, and I read your first 50 pages, and what was that, 2 years ago now? That was a while ago.
Yeah,
that I read your first 50 pages, and I thought, dude, this, and I was honest with you, this holds up, man. I read the big boys, or did. I don't know if I read all of them now, the last couple of years, but I have, and it's like, absolutely, someone should take interest in this. And then you start querying it and you realize, man, it is brutal out there. Brutal.
Yeah. The best advice I got, and it was from Ryan Steck. He was just telling me one day, he was like, dude, you need to think about something else. You really do. Like, you want to write military thrillers? That's great. Write them. But you want to get published, you're going to have to be very diverse. And I thought, at first I was like, I don't know if that's good advice or not. And then the more and more I thought about it, and the more and more I did research on it, I was like, oh, you know what? Ryan is right. He is dead right. Just go look at the reviews on like murder mystery and some of the science fiction, even young adult and fantasy and all that. They'll have 60, 70, 80, 90,000 reviews on Amazon.
Right.
They're selling books. Like, do you have to write that exactly? Do you have to sell your soul? No, you don't. But think about, what could you do with a storyline to kind of change the genre or blend it into another one a little bit? And I think that's where the project I've been working on lately that I'm really deep into is like, it's taken Michael Crichton and smashing it together with a little bit of Tom Clancy. And it's blending that line between Michael Crichton's kind of realistic science fiction and Tom Clancy's realistic political military thrillers. And it's like, I've gotten some decent like feedback on it, more so than anything else I've pitched around, and it's like, okay, maybe this is kind of the way forward to kind of break into things, but it's still tough.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's a hard one because I've had a lot of people ask me those questions as well, and I don't have a great answer for them because part of me always wants to say, write what's the stories that's in your head, and I still stick to that. But yeah, if you want to get what you might have to accept is if you write the stories in your head, you might also have to turn into a self-published indie author.
Yeah.
Because if you want, I'm happy to be one. I didn't want to be. I had Andrews and Wilson years ago in 16, 17 said self-publish your books, get your foot in the door, and I'm like, no, I don't want to be a self-publisher. And it wasn't a knock at the industry, although the industry can be knocked because I could literally go sit on my couch in the next month, create maybe a fantasy book, which I have no reason to be writing a fantasy book. I could go sit down and write a 50,000 word, which would be very small for fantasy, but whatever. Smallest fantasy book I could figure out, and I could have the thing published in 5 weeks on Amazon. Piece of cake from scratch. Should that thing be published? 0% chance that should be published. It's going to be total crap, but it can be published, and that's the danger of Amazon. But so my trepidation years ago was I knew that was the reputation, but I was more concerned about all the work it was going to be. It was like, I have a feeling it's hard enough to be an author. I have a feeling if you have to handle all the stuff, you have to do the marketing, or you have to pay for everything, it's going to be complicated. And someone now that's 3 years into it, let me tell you, it's pretty complicated. I spend more of my time doing everything besides writing than writing most times of the year. So I really have to, my time when I'm sitting down and writing a story becomes kind of like the gospel. It's the precious time of nothing messes with this. This is holy time.
Right. But you also have more control. You have more control. You have more say.
100% control. Yeah.
Let's talk about something I don't think people probably realize is that just because you sign a big contract with a big publishing house doesn't mean you get all the big things. And I'm not knocking the publishing industry, but let's be honest with you, Jeff Clark's not going to get the same kind of attention at Simon & Schuster that Brad or Jack are getting. They're established guys. They're bringing in the money.
No.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't tell them no.
So the raw truths on some of that, and these are not just hypotheses; these are true facts. Less than 2% of authors out there make $100,000 or more in the United States. And you got to remember when you're talking make $100,000 or more, Patterson's in that. So Patterson might've made 60 or 70 million last year with his 20 books that came out under 15 different names or whatever it was. So it's a super skewed number. Now, if you look at it on the surface, it's extremely discouraging. But I do tend to look at it as the glass is half full, and it says, hey, so you can make it. You can make a living on this. Just don't be that the only thing that you get into this for. It's kind of like the movie stuff. I was talking to someone recently about it on my podcast, is that it was always the thing years ago. And I still get the question probably once a week from someone being like, have you sold the Body Man rights? Or, hey, when's the Body Man going to come out? Or what's going to happen? And I just laugh at them. Like, yeah, you have no idea how this works. Again, everyone looks towards like the Jack Carrs of the industry and go, well, look what happened to Jack. He's executive producer. He writes scripts and all that. It's like Jack's already the 1% of the 1%.
Yes.
Having that control or that input on something in the Hollywood side is the 1% of the 1% of the 1%.
Right.
It rarely happens. You're more likely to be the Mark Graney, who Mark for the Gray Man was, people bought the rights early on. And I have zero idea what he got for money, but he got something. And then the rights expired and someone else picked them up, or the same place optioned again. And that happened and it was connected to tons of people over the course of 10 plus 15 years, whatever it was.
It was a long time.
Until they finally made it. But when they made it, Mark wasn't on set like, hey, Mark, what do you think should happen with the Gray Man on this scene? No, he did get to go to the premiere, but he had no interaction besides really some, I think, minor stuff. But it wasn't script approval. It wasn't this and that. And I know authors that won't sell their rights because the money's so small. And, Brad Taylor told me that years ago, and maybe since then he's sold the rights. But I remember one of the things that Brad was saying, for the money they offer, and then also for what they can do to your character. Well, Brad's character was a novelized person, Pike Logan. Brad didn't want to give up Pike Logan to make, whatever. We hit a movement in the country that says Pike Logan's too sexist and too this and that. We need a Patricia Logan. We're going to make it a female character, and we're going to make it a female ensemble, and we're going to change all that. And that's not saying there's anything wrong with doing that, but that was not what Brad's creation was. But if you sign your rights out, Hollywood can do whatever they want. Your books will still be what you want, but that starts to confuse people when they go, wait, is it Pike or Patricia? The one I saw on Netflix was a Patricia, and she had green hair, and,
it was totally different.
She fought crime in a tutu. And Brad's like, Brad is not writing a Patricia fighting crime in a tutu, Patricia Logan. So an extreme example, but an example that people do have to be aware of. Just because you write something doesn't mean Hollywood's going to come in, put a dump truck in your front yard of money, and then also be like, hey, write the scripts for us too. No, that's pretty rare.
I think I saw something the other day. It was like 85% of Hollywood movies are based on books, but only 1% of books get turned into Hollywood movies. There's something crazy like that I was like,
I believe it.
When I did the math on it, I was like, oh my God, that it just tells you how demanding Hollywood is on original storytelling, but how little of it actually makes it to the big screen.
Right.
And even today, with streaming and all that and the need for content, if you go on Netflix, what do you see on Netflix? Is it original content, or is it reruns of other things and past shows, or shows that they've picked up? Same thing with Amazon and Hulu and all those.
Sure.
They have content, but it's not all original content. It's a lot of bought content that they've either bought or they leased or they own or whatever it is. So it's like, if you're getting into this for money and fame and Hollywood movies and all that, I got a bad message for you. It's going to be hard to do that. You better love storytelling, because that's why you got to do it.
If that's what you got into it for, there's a bridge in San Francisco that, unfortunately, they've set up some nets, so maybe it won't work, but that'd be a good place to jump. Because I'm joking about that. I don't want anyone to harm themselves. But seriously, if you're in this for fame and fortune and all that, you have 100. It's like picking up a guitar and saying, I'm going to be the next fill in the blank, Billy Strings if you're into bluegrass, or the next Slash if you're into metal, or whoever. There's a lot of, and my son's a guitarist, and we have this conversation. There's a lot of really, really, really good guitarists out there that are sitting 10 miles up from me at a bar on Saturday night, maybe making $50. Mm-hmm. And they're not slackers either.
Yeah.
But they came into it with the same dream, possibly. Yeah. Or they just love doing it, and they're doing it for the joy of it. And that's what I always tell people from the writing. And I've had this asked to me. My first editor, the first person that edited The Body Man for me, he lived out in Hawaii. He was connected with me through a writer friend of mine. And before he even read it and started editing, he said, I got a question for you, and we need to have this answered before I agree to this. Yeah, what's the question? He goes, if I come back and tell you, not only can't I edit this, it's not good enough to be published, would you write another book? And I'm like, dude, I'll write books till I can't figure out how to write books anymore. I'll be at the nursing home still probably typing away on something, but it might just be ZZZZ, TTTT. It might be nothing that makes any sense, but I'll keep telling stories. I would love for them to pay the bills, but that's not my success level. That has to hit that spot to make this rewarding or whatever. My rewarding is when I finish it, type at the end, when I get to give my kids the copies, which my son just he leaves for school Wednesday. As we're filming this, he leaves. This is Monday. He leaves Wednesday. He left my house this morning though, and my hardbacks that I ordered are probably going to be here tomorrow or Wednesday. Of course, he's like, "Well, bring it up to school," and I'm like, "I bring it up to school. They're going to be throwing this thing out the top floor at a frat party or something. I'll just put it in his bedroom and sign it so it doesn't get destroyed." But no, giving a copy to my kids, giving a copy to my mom, stuff like that. Man, that's where I find not all the enjoyment of it, but that's where I kind of feel that fulfillment. And having the books behind me, I talk about this, and when I do my book the unboxing stuff. I'll order 25 or 50 copies of a book for signing events and to sell on my website. I don't want 50 copies. I don't want a collection of books in a closet and tell people, I wrote a book, here's copies of it. I want the one hard copy. I want the one paperback. I write myself a little note in it. I don't sign it. I'm not masochistic or egotistical or whatever. It's just, I leave myself a little note of what that book meant at the time, or something to kind of, that I'll look back at 20 years and be like,
Yeah.
Like for the Body Man, it was, something as simple as, you accomplished this. You worked so hard for this. I started writing in 2014. I didn't hold my book in my hand until 2021.
Yeah.
That was book number 4. And I didn't even hold a physical copy until I bought my own physical copy from Amazon, because my author copies, I don't think, came for 10 weeks. So by the time I got the author copies from the publisher, I really could care less about having those books. I just wanted to sell them and get them out. So it was, but those copies I bought from Amazon, which I still have, even though I've re-released that book with a different cover, for myself, and those will be the copies I keep and the copies I cherish, basically.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. Let's talk about some other projects, some other things you've been working on. I know you and John have got a lot going on, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Tell me about a little bit of that and kind of what it's been like kind of doing some different stuff.
Yeah, so we've talked about it in some podcasts. It's kind of still in a little bit of a neutral gear. I hopefully will see John this Saturday. I haven't seen John in a couple of years. We FaceTime and I've seen him, but I haven't actually physically seen him since,
Yeah.
man, I don't know, November or October of 23, 4, maybe. I don't know, something like that. No, a while. He'll be in Greenville with Shinedown Saturday, so I was going to try to go to Raleigh Thursday, but I was looking at everything, and I'm going to see my son up in school. He'll go up with his mom in the morning, and they'll get settled in the room, and I'll come in the afternoon to spend some time with him, maybe take him dinner. And I'm just like, do I really want to then drive? And Raleigh's about 3 hours. Do I want to drive after work on Thursday to go see a concert, drive 3 hours back, get up to work Friday morning? I'm like, maybe I won't go see a Raleigh show. I love the guys. I love hanging out with them, but it's like, nah. So I'll do the Greenville show. I might do Atlanta as well, but I'm even on the fence on that one. I was like, I'll just go to Greenville and see how I'm feeling. Do I want to drive 3 hours down to Atlanta? It's a Sunday, so that's a little easier to drive down for the Atlanta show. But Greenville's an hour away. It's pretty close. But I'll pick his brain when I see him this weekend and be like, hey, where are we at? Because we were thinking it was going to come out this year. I'm not sure if it will or not, or if it'll be January. But what it is an anthology of horror short stories. So we have a central theme, a theme story, and all of our stories kind of have a tie back to that or a mention of that, but they're independent stories. So we ended up having, I believe there's 13 of us total, if I recall. I should know that, shouldn't I? But I haven't looked at it for about 6 months, so 12 or 13. But we have several people from the horror community. JT Patton actually did a story for us. JT's done horror work, and he's also done, obviously, thriller books. That's where he kind of started his craft. A couple guys from the rock and roll world have submitted stories, so that's kind of cool. We have some rock stars that submitted stories, so we got this eclectic group, and I'm thrown in there somehow, someone that does not write horror by nature, that I have a story in there that I'm pretty proud of, called She. I don't know if I've said that in any of the podcasts yet, but that's the title of my story. It's She. Breaking news on this story. So so hopefully it comes out. And then John and I have been working on a project for
a minute now,
3 or 4 years now, and I don't think we've talked about it even in a year. He got super busy. He did a book of poetry. He's doing a second book.
Yeah.
I then in the meantime, I had a publishing deal, lost the publishing deal. Publisher went out of business. I started my own thing. So I think we have a really cool concept, and we've written a bunch, or we did write a bunch. We just need to find time to go grab a cabin somewhere for a weekend, lay the crap out, and be like, what are we doing? Are we writing this thing? Because it's a co-writing project that we're working on. Which that's an interesting thing. I didn't know much about co-writing when I first started writing. So I was, I won't say who. I was at a conference, and an author, a very well-known author, had a co-writing project come out. And so we're having a drink or whatever, and I'm like, so how do you decide who writes what? How does that work? Do you just like exchange chapters or whatever? And this person just nicely looked at me and they're like, Eric, if you see a book with 2 names on it, the name that's small wrote the book. And I'm like, oh, okay, really? I was like, that's how this works. And that's not saying that's how every co-writing project works, because I know Andrews and Wilson, they truly
those
write
dudes carry the load for sure. Like, man,
what after a while, because
yeah.
they write in each other's style so well, and they're so good at it. But I think that might be the exception to the rule from what I've gathered over the
Oh
years.
yeah. Well, those two, like, I think they know each other so well that it's like Brian and Jeff know when they're having good days or what they need to work on, and they hold each other accountable. And if Brian's having a bad day, Jeff's like, "Hey, I got this," and then vice versa. And I think they're just such a yin and a yang that they work so well that it's like those two are like born to write books together, and they do it so well. It's insane. It's like, how do you get 2 people to write as one? I don't know if anybody does it better than those 2.
I don't think anyone does. Well, and the interesting, and I don't remember their whole story. I remember they explained to me, but I haven't talked to them in years, and I haven't seen them in probably 6 or 7 years. It's been a while, but I know they both independently published before they came together and wrote a book together. So they kind of started a path, and then I don't remember if it was done as a challenge of, hey, let's just try writing something. I think it might have been a casual conversation at Thriller Fest that kind of started it. And the cool thing about that, and what I try to tell people, is you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So be open to trying something different. If someone come at you with, an idea like, hey, you want to do a project together, if you're going to ignore your family, or if you're going to ignore your own writing projects to your detriment to do a project, it's not a good idea. But if you can find the bandwidth, yeah, try it. I mean, you might end up being the next, Andrews and Wilson.
Yep.
Or you might start it and realize, this sucks. I don't ever want to work on a project with someone, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
You learn your lesson. So
yeah, you got to experiment for sure. Well, before I let you go, let's talk about what's next. What are you working on next? What's in store for 2026?
So 2026, if everything goes according to my psychotic plan, is 2 more books. One in the Omega Group world and one in the Bodyman world. Bodyman Downfall is the book. So anyone that's read Breach of Trust and wants to know why there's a list of names stuck to a dead person in the last chapter, you will find out what that list of name means from the get-go. People that have actually been buying, I've actually started advertising this week. They can go out and go to Amazon, go to Barnes & Noble, but if you do buy a copy of this from me, which you can do from my website, I am giving out the first chapter of Downfall to everyone that's buying a copy. I'm printing it off. It's not professionally edited. Probably has a few typos.
That's okay.
But I think you read the first chapter and be like, well, that's a cool way to start a book. So at least I hope so. So Downfall's coming. I don't have the date yet. I got to write still 98% of the book, so I'm working on that this fall. I'm probably mid to late summer. Downfall will be out next year. But then before that, I'm actually before I can get Downfall really rolling, besides the planning phase, which is what I'm doing like every day, is come up with ideas. I am editing the next Omega Group book, which is actually a backstory for Troy Evans. It's actually, Troy started as someone that was going to emulate his father and join the FBI. He wanted to be a special agent in charge of a field office. That was his goal as a kid. Finds himself in college, and 9/11 happens. And when 9/11 happens, it rocks his world. Everything he thinks he knows, he doesn't know. And it changes his path, basically. So how that happens and why that happens is revealed in the prequel book, but it's an Omega Group book, but it's a prequel of how he became part of the Omega Group, essentially. I hope to have that one out in January. That's my tentative thought. I'm still doing some heavy edits now that I need to get some people to read it. Then I need to get a professional look. I've got to get the cover design hopefully in September. So I'll keep it abbreviated one. The Omega Group doesn't have the reach the Bodyman does, so I don't need to have a long pre-sale or anything like that. I might not do pre-orders until like October or something, maybe for a couple months. But I'm excited about that because it's a book that I originally had written back in 2015, 16, I think 16. So it was like this, but it was a hard book to write because 9/11, it's a very minor part, but I was really worried when I wrote that at that time of, could I ever publish this book? Because I don't ever want people to think I'm trying to profit off a horrible incident. And I will say that book's actually, I already did the dedication to it. It's actually dedicated to the 9/11 first responders and to the military that then went and served and spent a career fighting the war on terror. Because what people did on the 9/11 and the days that followed, and then the people that joined the military or part of the military during that, whether or not everything was what we were told it was, people went in with pure hearts to do what they thought was right. And I think that to be applauded, even if other people had war. So
cool. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, another Omega Group book. And then, of course, the sequel to Breach of Trust, Downfall, which will come out next year. We survived both thunderstorms. It's been an hour. We haven't dropped off. That's great. I mean,
I'm impressed.
Pretty amazing because I don't know if you could hear it, but right outside my window here, it was like 70-mile-an-hour gusts. Like I thought, and here in a minute, my wife's going to barge in the room. Like, we got to go down to the shelter. This is getting crazy.
Oh, the shelter. No, I thought I heard some noise, but I was having rain in my deck, which is the other room over that way, and I could hear the thunderstorm on this side, and I'm kind of like, is Starlink going to keep working? Hey. We're going to find out here.
Hey, good Elon, job, Elon. You get the thumbs up because it worked good.
Good job, Elon.
All right, guys, go make sure you follow Eric on social media. Go to ericpbishop.com. Pick up Supreme Justice, pick up The Body Man, pick up Breach of Trust, pick up the Omega Group. Pick them all up and make sure you follow Eric online for what he's got going on in 2026 and beyond. Eric, thanks, brother. Don't go away. We're going to end the stream, but we'll chat offline here for a few minutes.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate the opportunity.